I think we are doing it. Let's see if we can try to pop out this live chat. Welcome everyone. Let's see. Sorry, as always, apologize. We're trying to get this new software to work, and it seems like it's pretty much working. But we're trying to... I'd like to see more of chat. That's what's up. Are you guys able to see me okay? Yeah, I mean, I like this. The software I'm using gives you one chat that shows me Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. So I'm on all of them, which is cool. Obviously, YouTube vastly the most popular by far, but you know, welcome to the Facebook Live and Twitch folks. So yeah, we'll give everybody a little bit of a chance to get in here, get warmed up, filter in, and then we are gonna do a little bit of an update, a little bit of checking out the maps, and of course answering all of y'all's questions, of which there are always a lot, which is nice. All right, so I'm just going to get these pulled up here. Right, where are people dialing in from? I see Sweden, Georgia, Ohio. Let's see, let's get some of this stuff pulled up. Brazil, nice. Croatia, dude. Croatia's sick. All right, well, it looks like... Yeah, let's see. Let's see. Just trying to see what else is up, guys. Man, I wish... Let's see. All right, I'm going to try to pull this up on YouTube as well, on the YouTube Studio. I feel like the interface could be better. But let's see. So it should be in the live room. All right, there we go. Popping out chat. Oh, beautiful. Okay, that's much better, I think, actually. Shout out to the guy who claims he's from the moon. All right. Yeah, and as always, guys, if you guys have questions, throw them in the comments, right? I'll try to get to them. Of course, if you want to jump to the front of the line, you can always use the super chat feature. Oh yeah, we're getting some people coming in from Twitch. I'm into it. I'm into it. Were we able to... I'm trying... Last time I streamed on Twitch, I was like, why is no one here? And then I realized I was streaming to Twitch's Fortnite channel. So people like tuned in thinking I was going to be what are you doing, Twitch? People thought like, oh, Paul's streaming Fortnite, and then they got a Ukraine update. So I'm trying to make sure I'm in the news category this time. Which I'm like pretty sure I am. Like medium sure that I am. Let's see if we can make sure. Yes, we're in just chatting. Perfect. I love it. I love it. Thanks all you guys on Twitch out here chilling, making this fun. Okay. And we'll try to do it. Thanks. Other people are like, oh, is this a Fortnite stream? Will you be streaming Fortnite? No, it is not a Fortnite stream. I do have a Fortnite creator code though. I got persuaded. I think from when they sponsored, this was like a year and a half ago, they sponsored a stream. I think my creator code is combat vet. No caps, no spaces. So if you got a kid or you are into Fortnite, you can drop in creator code combat vet. Here, I'll put it in chat. And yeah, you can support me. People hate on Fortnite. Listen, I'm a 36-year-old man, okay? I have no delusions. I can't keep up with the Warzone kids, all right? I can't do it. All right? I love FPS. I love like the battle royale format, but like Tarkov's full of hackers. COD Warzone is just full of absolute sweaties. But you know what? Fortnite, I can do it. Wait, okay. Did we just get a super chat? I can't tell. It says super chat. Paul, if there's a breakthrough before winter, where would you put your money on the location? Okay. All right. If I were to do that, let's actually use this. Let's talk about the actual conflict a little bit. So if there were to be a breakthrough, right? You've got the whole map here. There's two possibilities. The first possibility is a breakthrough where Ukraine is trying to break through. And as you guys could see, Russia's concentrating its forces where, well, Ukraine is concentrating its forces, which is itself like sort of I don't want to, which is like problematic, right? As we've seen, Russia can dig in, they mine the areas. There's always multiple reserves. So as one unit tends to get pushed back, the other units are already establishing defensive lines. It's very hard, right? It's like, imagine you're a boxer, right? But you're only punching with your straight, with your cross. Well, at some point, your opponent's just going to put up their guard right there, right to block the cross. And they don't have to worry about protecting their body or protecting the side of their head because they know you're only throwing the cross. And that's kind of the situation they're in, right? Ukraine has shown it's throwing crosses, it's throwing basically Staromayorsk and Robotine. These two axes are like the crosses. Ukraine's throwing at these two. The jab is Bakhmut, right? They're pushing them back in Bakhmut. They're using that to set up attacks in Zaporizhia. The problem, sorry, can you guys see this? I'm looking at YouTube. Is there like a delay? Yeah, you guys have the map up. Okay. Okay. There's just a huge delay on the software. Got it. Okay. Okay. So this is kind of their like setup, right? They wanted to pin down forces, get Russia to divert their forces. The problem is, again, as you guys can see, Russia's kind of figured this stuff out. They've got some other concentrations of forces here, the DNR and LNR guys. Obviously they're trying to make some level of advance up here in the north, but the problem is they've put up their guard in these three locations, right? So Ukraine's current strategy is just to grind on Russian forces and hope that their rate of attrition is high enough that Russian forces they run out of munitions, they run out of people, and they have their formations kind of break apart as they before Ukraine basically runs out of people and munitions. That's it. So where would they break through? It's possible right? Just like if I knew Francis Ngannou was just throwing crosses, yes, I would absolutely try to defend in a sound way. But at some point, the fact that he is a heavyweight UFC fighter will make my own fists trying to protect me pointless. That is a possibility, right? And it doesn't have to be, a 36-year-old. Well, I guess Ngannou is also at match. It doesn't have to be the 180-pound guy versus the 265-pound heavyweight, right? Even if I was to fight Floyd Mayweather, like at some point he would just be so good that my guard wouldn't offer me protection. But as discussed, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of effort. So, yeah. So, in conclusion, where do I think there would be a breakthrough? If it were me, I would be looking for a breakthrough at somewhere where Russia hasn't been so active in its defenses, probably up in the north, honestly. That seems the place where they're least likely to have established defenses. Anyway, Brett Evans. Use BMPs, T-72s, nothing from USA. Go south through Belgorod and back around the trenches. That's actually not a bad theory. The problem is that it would, to do so at a level that is strategic, you'd have to run a huge deception operation all the way up here. So what he's proposing is, without using any U.S. equipment, invading Russia, looping around, like probably trying to enter like through one of these roads here, pick them up, and then push into like this Troitsky, and then create chaos in the backfield. You've effectively looped around them. That's not a bad idea, actually. It could work. The problem would just be getting the sufficient concentration and maintaining OPSEC, because you'd have to prevent Russia from deploying, again, pivoting to the defense before you can pivot to the offense. Right, Scott Schneider asks, when Ukraine pressures supply lines in Zaporizhia through Crimea, why doesn't Russia ship by land from Rostov-on-Don? One, I think they do. I think just sort of like if you have a heart attack, your heart has a lot of arteries. But if you drop the volume, you run into some serious problems. It's also not that easy to pivot logistics, right? If you've spent 2 years establishing, or if you've spent who knows how long for Russia, right? They've been occupying the Donbas for a long time. But and they've been occupying Crimea for 10 years. So if you have a large military logistics presence established in the Crimean Peninsula, then it's not an overnight thing to sit there and be like, oh, we're going to pivot to Rostov-on-Don. Because like they have a process for getting, say, fuel across the Kerch Bridge and up and in, and munitions depots, and they have, parts depots. Like I think you're right. I mean, it's also worth noting that like this is pretty rough terrain. You guys could see that basically crossing the border, there's a border here. And then I think the next crossing point's like way up here, because it's an international border. So it's designed to have, like, in some ways, better controlled but high capacity roadways. So they're also choke points. And yeah, I think that's the biggest part of it. Is just, this is the system they've built out, and Russia may still be Ukraine may still be targeting these routes that Russia is also using. However, it may just not be making the news, right? Like, obviously blowing up a bridge is dramatic and it's going to get you clicks, and nobody's going to say, oh, a HIMARS strike in outside Maximov, Russia. Like, nobody cares about that, or like, oh, really, they do strikes in Mariupol. That's probably where Ukraine would target Russian logistics systems in Mariupol, because everything coming from Rostov-on-Don is going to be in Mariupol. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. We just got a bunch. All right. Alexander Mason asks, it seems to me what Ukraine is putting its money on is forcing Dnipro in late September. By the way, if you need someone to translate Russian, I can do it. Cool. You mean crossing like the Dnipro River? So A river crossing's hard, man. It requires very skilled troops. It requires a lot of bridging assets, and it requires a lot of surprise. And that can be really tough in this kind of conflict. That's all I'll say. Bridging remains just really tough. Jacob Andrew says, Russia sending convicts forward and freeing space in prisons proves to be useful and grim since they have room for soldiers and civilians who refuse to go to the front line. Actually, a lot of the translations and intercepted phone calls that we've heard have been pretty consistent, that a lot of soldiers that are AWOL or refuse to go to the front line are actually given suspended sentences and then forced to the front line and are assigned to some of the more dangerous convict or like storm units. So I think that Russia's getting the best of both worlds in that it can convict deserters of a crime, but also not have to actually put them in prison. John Lucas, if they went through Belgorod, would that trigger a tactical nuclear strike? It may at scale, right? These raids that are a few hundred people, that probably wouldn't, right? But if Ukraine was to cross the border with tens of thousands of troops or 5,000 troops and then pop over in Troitsky, maybe you might have. Yeah, that may do it, because Russia has said it will use nuclear weapons to defend its territorial integrity. But remember, technically, Russia declared Luhansk and Donetsk as Russian sovereign territory. So the confusion deepens. You know, it's and that's not an accident, right? This isn't like Russia doesn't know how to write nuclear policy. Sometimes nuclear policy is intentionally vague because you want you want your opponents in any nuclear standoff to be guessing where your boundaries are. It's like imagine if you said, I will only use nuclear weapons, or I will only use nuclear weapons if your forces enter my sovereign territory, period. Well, that means that, you know, your enemies will go, oh, okay, great. We know exactly where we have to stop. So we'll just blockade all your ports. And you go, shoot, right? So instead, you keep it vague. You say, we'll, you know, existentially protect the country. Again, that sort of vague wording is actually preferred in nuclear policy, because then you go, oh, what does it mean to protect the country? Or you say, like, protect the country and its allies from imminent threats. You're like, that could be anything, you know, and it keeps your opponents guessing. Blunderboy asks, is it true that UAF have abandoned NATO doctrine? It appears that way. I mean, they tried to run air-land battle, and it failed. Like I think I don't, or rather it failed to deliver the results that air-land battle is supposed to. But primarily, I think a lack of mine clearing equipment is the uncomfortable reality, that they had a little bit of mine clearing and they didn't appreciate the depth and scale of Russian mining operations. You know, how do you, right? Like a Miklik can clear like a 100-meter minefield, but if you're talking about 3 kilometers deep, it's a real problem. So yeah, they seem to have evolved and gone over to something that looks very Russian in tactics. So I would say probably. All right, Mark Shapcott asks, odds of Ukraine making it to Melitopol to Mariupol unsupplyable. If Russia front-loaded troops in the south, will the rear lines even matter? Yeah, so here's what you got to remember. If you put a troop, let's say you put a company of soldiers right here on the front lines. Well, every day that company of soldiers, every one of them has to eat 2,000 calories. They have to drink a gallon-ish of water. They have to get, let's say the average is 30 rounds a day of small arms ammunition. So if you place a troop somewhere, you need to either have, you can do what's called forward supply. So you can build some supply depots very close to the front line. But, you know, imagine the liability of sitting there and going, oh, okay, here's a company and, a year's worth of supplies are here. Well, if you're Ukrainian artillery, you're going to find that and you're going to absolutely crush this depot. So you've got to sit there and make these trade-offs. How much supplies go forward and how many supplies are kept in the rear, and how rearward are those supplies. And so this is, again, this is the art of logistics, is like you have to look and say, all right, how stable are our current resupply lines? How easy is it to get goods, material from our like supply depot, all the way to the forward supply area, finally to the troops themselves. This math is hard. This is hard stuff. And so, yeah, it's just not, there's not an easy, straightforward way to do this. That's just the bottom line. So you've got to make trade-offs. And that's sort of the thing to remember with all this. So anyway, talking about some updates. There's actually, the only updates are from yesterday, right? These advances from Robotyne, where you see just kind of some marginal changes. Well, actually, I say that, as we talked about, right? Ukraine advancing block by block. You can see as of the 17th, right? They had just gotten their foothold in Robotyne, and then, like we talked about, Russian forces withdrawing to behind this street here. So I think you're seeing a steady workmanlike advance through the town. Again, this doesn't look like much, but as we saw in the Battle of Bakhmut, you do this for a couple of days and it really adds up. Right? You're seeing something similar in Uruzane. You can see Ukrainian forces just sort of expanding out, controlling some of the windbreaks around the town. And Russian forces, again, kind of repositioning, trying to hold some of these windbreaks and trying to build a line of defense that isn't quite so sticking out. Again, they're trying to not create a situation where troops are facing fire from both the north and from the west. But other than that, there's really not many changes to the front lines, which, again, like we talked about, Ukraine has very clearly signaled where it's putting its offensive action, where its offensive push is going. When we look over, at the combat map, you guys can see, again, we're looking at 36 combat engagements by Russia, but concentrated, what's interesting, almost no counterattacking, which is strange for Russia, especially given that, Ukraine is still advancing along these two axes, slowly, but they're doing it. And Russia doesn't seem to be launching meaningful counterattacks, instead concentrating on their own offensive work outside Donetsk and near Kurdyumivka. Like, they're counterattacking in some places, just not where they really need to be, which is itself telling. It's possible that maybe this attrition is paying dividends. Maybe they literally can't counterattack, or they can't counterattack in a substantive way. But it's also possible they've stopped and decided to refit, that they've tried to counterattack it in Uruzane or Robotyne and it failed, and now they're just sort of digging in. So, again, maybe nothing, but maybe an interesting sign. Mark Shapcott asks, does Russia still have an operational reserve in the south? Institute for the Study of War says no, but the Institute for the Study of War has been saying that Russia has no operational reserve for 6 months. Russia's operational reserve is the continuous mobilization of conscripts. I think they just do reserves differently. I'm not sure what to tell you. I really don't. I'm not party. Again, Institute for the Study of War says no. I say they probably do. It may just not be at a strategic level that we think of. There may be individual companies or battalions that are cycled off the front lines, and then you may have like a continual flow of conscripts going into some of these units. I think they are. I think the reserves just aren't that concentrated. Matthew B. Johnson, thank you. So looking at WarMapper, WarMapper also doesn't have a ton of updates for us. Let's see. His last update was the 17th. Let's see. Dimitri from War Translated. He sometimes has some wild stuff. Oh, can't show that. Oh, even he doesn't have anything. Let's see. Oh, 6 hours ago. Um, Interesting. This is a war correspondent asking, how do I explain the war to the people? Suitable arguments must be found for what's happening in the SMO zone. This is the special military operation. Why it's happening, suitable arguments must be found. Guys, that's not a great sign. The process of explanation should not be slowed down or weakened. You can punish people, you can grind them to powder, but if possible, explain. So here, what he's talking about is you can punish people for questioning the special military operation. You can just oppress them until they no longer protest. But he's like, if possible, you should explain to them what's happening, why their military is fighting, why they are being killed. Right? Many people are hesitating, and we need everyone. He says, I meet students a lot. They're a rough audience, but they are not stupid. They accept facts as an argument. They know how to think. And with active, honest work, they agree with the obvious. This is important. Well, if it's obvious, then why is it so hard to explain? Right? I mean, going to war is not quantum physics, right? It's not it's not like relativity. You know, the reasons need to be ironclad. And if you don't have them, it's a problem, right? I love this. Why in the army, after 2 years of service, a young man becomes disciplined and tidy. An informal approach, a classic, plus the generation of new methods for Sharshings, commanders, and to be honest, old-timers. But the main goal is a useful person for society. That's another story. All right, that's the most... It warms my heart knowing that there's still like super boomer takes, even on the other side of the world, where they're just like, back in my day, you used to do your time in the military and you came out hardworking and tidy. And believe it or not, I actually do agree that like a U.S. national service program would be really valuable on like a social level. Thanks, Nick Adams, by the way. I see you. But sitting there and being like, the college kids don't understand why we got to go to war, and I can't explain it to them, but we do. I miss the days when people were when young men were disciplined and tidy from their military service. I don't know what to tell you. I don't think that's true. If you've been in the military, you know that you don't come out tidy. There's lots of people that come out just as messy as they went in, maybe more messy. There's a lot of people that show up undisciplined and they leave undisciplined. It's not a miracle fix. But yeah, I think having everyone have to perform some sort of service in the name of the country. And I sit there and I talk about the military because that's what I was in. But, you know, if you went and you fixed up national parks, if you were a wildland firefighter, if you taught special needs kids at a school where they need a little bit of an assist, any of that, right? Something where you have to not do it for you, but do it in a way that you work collaboratively with the general public, with all your peers in your country. Y'all get together and you work for a common task in which you have to, see people from different backgrounds at different places, right? And this is like a fantasy, but like the idea, I think that if you're a young person, you should understand in like a real way that like, and the country should understand in a real way that like you show up for them, they show up for you. Like a lot of people don't understand this, and they're like, oh, the government, that's that thing that just oppresses me. And it's like, well, sometimes, like, I'm not standing for the government out here, but like, the government also keeps the potholes filled in the road, like at the end of the day, I appreciate that if somebody, murders someone, the government has a process to weigh the evidence that they did it, and then put them in prison if necessary. I'm glad the government does those things, and I appreciate that they do it for me. And I think that the government, on some level, appreciates that I showed up and fought their war when they wanted me to. And yeah, it means on one hand that, like, I feel like I have moral ground to hold the government accountable for what it does. I don't know if you saw my last video on Friday about the senator trading on insider information, making bank on the Ukraine conflict. But, like, yeah, I feel like I have an obligation to do that because I put up for the government. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like, if you guys know what I mean, though. If you work hard and you sacrifice for something, then, like, you're connected to that emotionally, right? You feel like you have a stake in it. And I feel like a lot of people now, their response, they either want the government to leave them entirely alone or they actively hate it. And it's like, you don't even care. Like, if you want the country to run better, then, like, pretend to at least have a stake in it. Anyway, Nico, what about Kazachi Laheri? Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. So the rumors are, like, back and forth on whether or not... Yeah, so Kazachi Laheri, rumors keep going back and forth on whether or not Ukraine was, how persistent they were in their efforts to establish a bridgehead, but it sounds like this is a raid. There was never, they crossed in boats with 40 dudes. It actually sounds like it may have been a defection. There's some rumors that one of the captured officers, a man named Major Tomov, was captured alive with maps and a whole variety of intelligence, and is now actively assisting Ukraine, pointing out positions, etc. And it would make sense then that Ukraine would want to stage a raid across the river and capture him if he's actually had reached out and was like, hey, I want to defect. So let's see if I can find some of the footage of him. I think his name is Major Tomov, Russia. Let's see. Here we go. You can always count on Newsweek. Missing Russian Major Tomov, captured by Ukraine, reveals heavy losses. Video has emerged showing a Russian commander reported captured by Ukraine. Speaking about heavy troop losses during an interrogation published. This is a week ago, on the 14th. Published a 14-minute video of his interrogation. Said Russian losses, Russian prospect of the war, lack of training of troops. Yeah. He said he was drafted under a partial mobilization order in 22, been in Ukraine since October of 2022, so almost a year. He was chief of staff of his unit prior to being appointed a commander. He said his unit's losses are around 30%. Troops are terrible. Yeah, this sounds like someone who may have wanted to defect. Whoa, it is necessary to return to your military units and units on the territory of Russian Federation and restore order in your country as God did. I appeal to all combat officers to ask them to stop this pointless war on Ukrainian territory. It will be lost. It will not bring anything good to our homes. I think there's a medium chance that was actually a coordinated defection. Okay, John Klein asks if... Oh, and okay, wow, we're behind. All right, John Klein, if I was the Ukrainian defenders, what would I do right now? I would probably engage in pretty low-level combat operations to fix Russian forces in place in Staromayorsk and Robotyne. So, cut them in half. And then I would start having my staff game out a scenario that would let us quickly deploy forces either here or here. Start doing the terrain analysis, the route analysis. Figure out how we can quicker than Russia can do it, get armored forces up here and breaking through Russian lines, because we know that Russia isn't digging in up here. They're trying to take territory. And so we know there's no big minefields here, right? If we can get the timelines right. I think that's the pivot I would start to game out. I would start to run those scenarios with my staff. Okay, Turna asks, I stopped following because it feels like we're stuck in a stalemate until one side runs out of supplies. It can definitely feel that way right now. This counteroffensive is going slowly, but I would also say that there are some signs that there's at least some indications that Russia's really being attrited pretty badly. So it's sort of like in the First World War, eventually the attrition on Germany became so great that their lines just began to collapse wholesale. And Russia, actually, in the First World War, they experienced their troop morale got so low that their troops, as the Russian Revolution was taking place, their troops threw down their weapons and just left the trenches. Like, Germany just marched unopposed into Russia. So I say that because it is possible that the war's end may look something like that. JB, thank you. All right, so let's see. Let's see if there's any other like big noteworthy news. Nothing really. Oh, interesting. The Swedish Gripen, which is a good modern fighter, is actually apparently Ukrainians are training in the Gripen. So let's see. Let's do a little bit of specs on the JAS 39 Gripen. Oh, and by the way, since we got everybody here, I'm just want a quick shout out, combatvetnews.com. So I'm dropping a new video. I'm trying to drop every Tuesday and Thursday, and try to keep it so that you guys could see whatever the past couple days worth of fighting, whatever videos we have from that, we do the analysis. I literally can't even show you the thumbnails because the fighting has been so intense. The aftermath of Odozane, we have that dash cam footage of the Humvee hitting an IED. I do a deep dive in that, or a mine. I can't even show you the thumbnail or I'll get demonetized. But if you want to support the channel, this is the number one way to do it, guys. You see sponsors drying up, YouTube demonetizing me all the time. It really, really, I depend on you guys for your support. So thanks to everybody that is a member. And if you're interested, any one of these tiers will get you access to the members only area. Of course, as always, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe to the channel and you haven't liked the video, please do so. That's free and it's easy, and it's a very like helpful thing. Helps tell YouTube that I'm making good quality content. Thanks. Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the stats maybe for the Gripen. It's made by Saab. Well, whatever that means to you. Actually, first flew in 88, and it was, introduced in service in 96, and it's with the Swedish, Brazilian, South African, and Hungarian Air Force. So it's like it's about a 36-year-old airframe, only around 300 ever built. Wow, interesting. But I guess that makes sense. Yeah. Interesting. I don't have a ton of stats on it, but yeah, it looks like, let's see, cost per flight hour. It is, it looks like extremely budget friendly. Just $6,000 per flight hour as opposed to $25,000 for the F-35, $22,000 for the Eurofighter, even $13,000 for an FA-18. It's comparable to literally an F-16 in terms of flight hours, but even that, it's lower than that. So it seems like a very budget-friendly aircraft, very cheap to keep in operation, which is probably good for Ukraine. Yeah. Obviously, it's from Sweden, so it's not necessarily a NATO-compliant aircraft, I think. Yeah, I think that's correct. Nope. Later aircraft are fully NATO interoperable. Okay. So it was not designed NATO interoperable, but now it is. So yeah, I imagine this seems like a pretty capable aircraft. Yeah, again, it seems like pretty inexpensive to operate. Again, Brazil, Hungary, South Africa, these are countries on a budget that still need modern fighter aircraft or multi-role aircraft. Thailand, right? Brazil. So, yeah, I think I would say, though it looks like it bid and failed in a lot of countries' trials, including Switzerland, losing out to the Eurofighter. Yeah, so, okay. I mean, I would say this looks like promising for Ukraine. I think Ukraine's obviously not going to say no to any modern fighter aircraft. But yeah, I think there's some. I mean, I think the appeal is just that it's so cheap to fly. I think that's what it comes down to. Jacob Andrew asked, despite the lack of air power, Ukraine's use of drones to target SAM sites, trucks, artillery is pretty wild. See all videos from the south. Oh, we've been checking them out. Yeah, the drones and the missile strikes are definitely compensating for some of the lack of combat aircraft, right? The drones are performing the large portions of the reconnaissance role. And some of the suppression of enemy air defenses to a lesser extent. You also have the drones and rocket artillery, or drones and missile combination, right? Drones plus HIMARS, where drones will recon a target, HIMARS will strike it. So yeah, I think they're doing their best to compensate for the lack of air superiority, but the thing that drones and HIMARS or drones and artillery can't do is that CAS. Close air support is just its own animal. It can get so close. It has, you get an aircraft on station and you have real-time response rates, right? Those aircraft are, clearing the enemy out right in front of you and then enabling you to advance. So it's nice, but in the actual where the rubber meets the road, there's still something to be said for having a high-speed human being, and I'm not going to sit there and be like it has to be a human in a cockpit, right? But you want to be able to talk directly to them to provide that CAS ability. So what other questions do you guys have? There's got to be other questions. I know it. It's funny. The chat seems to really like the Griffin, which is I appreciate. Ricardo Ospina has, how can you do CAS without SAID? Okay, so what he's saying is, how can you do close air support without a significant suppression of enemy air defenses? Or I guess dead is probably defeat of enemy air defenses. First, correct. You have correctly identified one of the core problems here is that the Ukrainian Air Force, it's not clear that they were in the skies at scale. It's not clear the Ukrainian Air Force was ever large enough to engage in SAID, right? To suppress Russian air defenses. The Russian Air Force has been unable to suppress Ukrainian air defenses similarly, and I think this is one of the big questions. So I guess, sorry, the rhetorical answer to your question is how can CAS happen without SAID or dead? The answer is if you have a stealth fighter. If you have fighters that cannot be detected by radar or cannot be detected by like infrared seeking missiles, then that's how you would do that. Again, if they had top tier stealth aircraft, they had a bunch of F-35s, would they have the same problem? Maybe not. F-35s may be able to get air superiority in this battlefield, but Ukraine's never going to get them. Yeah, I actually don't know the answer officially. Can an F-35 be detected by manpads? I don't know. Right? Radar, they can see the F-35, but I don't. Detecting, locating. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, if anybody knows if the F-35 would be able to be targeted with like a heat-seeking man pads, like a what do they call it, like the iglas or whatever, let me know. Ukrainian sea baby drones look very promising. How do you think they'll be used going forward? From John Klein. Well, John, I think they have limited value because naval warfare is so limited here. Denying key areas, key ports, key maritime transit routes to Russia, right? Denying Russia freedom of the seas, I think, is their biggest role, right? Stopping Russia from dominating the Black Sea. I think that's the best thing that they're good for. They can't necessarily blockade a port or anything like that. They can't. It's not clear that they can operate over long distances, but again, I think it has some possibilities. Diffuse asks, what happened to Bieber and Dalek? I'm not sure who you're talking about. Snark asks, why are there less than 1,000 likes? Yeah, why? Yeah. Please hit like. Matthew Johnson asks, why no torpedo drones was my original question. And what about air mobile? Okay, why no torpedo drones? Because the boat drones are cheaper. They're so much cheaper. And signal fidelity under the water may be really poor. But the simple reality is that you could buy a basically commercial off-the-shelf little boat and pack it full of explosives and stick a GoPro on it and a little RC car. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little, but not by much, right? They're very cheap and very effective. Like, again, you've got to understand, they're spending maybe $10,000-$12,000 on this aircraft, on these boats, and they're taking out multi-million-dollar warships. So, like, why? You don't need to engineer them more. You just need to build more of them, right? Air mobile. Well, without suppression of enemy air defenses and without air mobile requires a certain scale of helicopter operations. And what he's talking about, air mobile, is the term in the military for when you have basically a fleet of helicopters move an entire light infantry company up and over enemy lines and put them down behind the enemy. It's just airborne operations with extra steps. And it requires air mobile trained troops, which Ukraine, it's not clear that they have in any major numbers. It requires a large scale of helicopter pilots. And it requires relative freedom from enemy air defenses. The enemy air defenses, they can be there, but again, they've got to be suppressed. Russian air defenses are just too combat effective. The potential for loss would just be too great. Ricardo asks, even stealth fighters use suppression of enemy air defenses and dead in the Gulf War and Kosovo. D stands for destruction. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I have no doubt that, stealth fighters are great for SED. That's a great role for them, right? It's like these small number of fighters clear the airspace, so to speak, and then allow non-conventional fighter aircraft or multi-role aircraft to enter the airspace and conduct more nuanced support operations, right? That's a great use for them. And you would be crazy to risk your stealth fighters and just not engage in suppression of enemy air defenses on a goof. But the question is, if the chips were down and you couldn't do suppression of enemy air defenses, sort of where Ukraine is today, right? If the U.S. was to say, hey, we'll give you all of our F-35s, all the support, and all the pilots, how would Ukraine roll them out? Ukraine would probably use them to suppress enemy air defense sites, but ultimately they would still have the problem of man pads, and they would probably still fly F-35s, and just accept that there is a small but non-zero risk of taking aircraft losses from man pads. Okay, wait. I think we're caught up. Cool. Yeah. I mean, okay, wait. Just responding to one of the comments here, someone says if you consider losing your best jets and helos every time you fly air superiority, you need to stop trying to redefine words. Air superiority doesn't mean that you can operate with no losses. The U.S. lost combat aircraft in Iraq and Afghanistan, and there was never any. No one would ever argue that the airspace was ever contested. But that doesn't mean that losses don't happen. I mean, listen, we lose combat aircraft in non-combat incidents, right? Mechanical failures, pilot errors. So like on a long enough timeline, all aircraft will be destroyed, right? Like if you flew an F-35 for 100 years, statistically, one of those missions, something would go sideways and the aircraft will be lost. But we consider it to not be like you said, an every time event. So if you sit there and go, hey, there's a 1% chance that our aircraft will be lost in any given sortie, I'd say you have air superiority, right? If you say there's a 10% chance that an aircraft will be lost on any given sortie, you probably don't. I'm ballparking here. There may be actual numbers in doctrine. Like doctrine may sit there and go, hey, the chances of it may spell it out in doctrine. Nico, appreciate you. Stephen Booth asks, even if Russian defenses could stop 100, the sea drones are even if Russian defenses could stop 100, the sea drones are cheap enough that's cost effective to send 120. Same math as the mines. Yeah, I think Stephen's spot on. It's mathematically so worth it to just create these drone swarms. Especially when you're talking about you need one to work, whereas for Russia to succeed, it needs to have a 100% defeat rate. So if Russia's defeat rate of these above the sea drones, like if they defeat 99% of them, it's still a failure. Like their ships are still getting sunk. Any other questions that you guys have for me? So I'm just scrolling through. Oh, Keel from Twitch. Do I think the EU is doing a good job supporting Ukraine? What could they do better? You got to remember, the EU economy is the size of the United States collectively. But the US seems like about 10 times the support to Ukraine, like on a dollar basis. So that I think they could stand to do better. So I'm just trying to show some love to the people on Twitch. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left, guys. I just want to give a quick shout out first to combatvetnews.com. Again, if you just joined us, this is my site. Basically, Patreon gave me the boot. YouTube has been demonetizing my content pretty regularly. So I launched Combat Vet News to basically be my own members only site. I literally can't even show you the thumbnails to these videos or I'll get demonetized. They're that crazy because the fighting has been that intense. But we have video of the aftermath of Orozane we analyze. We analyze the dash cam footage from the Humvee hitting the mine. We do all that in the members only section, and it's the best way to support the channel. So if you want to, any one of these tiers is going to get you access to the videos. And of course, I always appreciate everybody that supports me on Combat Vet News. Jacob Andrew, thank you, man. Thanks for the love. I'm glad you guys get value out of the daily updates. That's why I do them. The other thing I just wanted to shout out is, of course, my newsletter, the Strategic Sitrep. This is a newsletter I launched where we basically take the most relevant national security stories. We remove out all of the bias, the salaciousness, the hype, and we tell you both what's happening, but also so what? Like, why do you need to know this? What is the real story going on? And we talk about, again, peacekeepers in Mali, the Wagner Group, Tuareg rebels. These are the stories that I think are really relevant to the national security space, even if they don't get covered by the news. So if you're interested in getting that in your inbox, it's just once a week. Go to the strategicsitrep.com. Pop in your email. It's free. We don't it's free. We don't sell your email. We don't do any of that. We just want to have another vehicle to help get people real national security news. Thanks, Brandon Christensen. I appreciate you. Other than that, guys, any other questions? Oh, yeah, definitely hit the like button. Yeah. I am literally streaming on Twitch. Yep, simultaneously. Yeah, so, I'm trying to get better about streaming on more platforms. So it's not a day, it's once a week. You get the newsletter once a week. It's not going to be in your inbox every day. And also, if you haven't come over to the Discord, you should. I've got something big planned. Hopefully, I know every week is going to be the week I announce it. We're still sorting out some last minute problems, but it's hopefully, not hopefully, it's going to be potentially huge. It's a great way to help Ukraine. It's gonna be a win-win-win. That's what I keep telling people. But I can't share much more than that. Being intentionally vague, but I really appreciate it. If you want to be the first to hear about it when it does drop, you're gonna want to be a member of the Discord. Plus, it's got a whole Ukraine OSINT chat that's just going on 24/7. So it's a lot of fun. Matt, thank you for stopping by. I think that's kind of it, guys. I appreciate you guys so much, all of you, for joining me, everybody on Twitch, on Facebook Live, and of course, right here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Be sure to subscribe, hit like, and that's all I got, man. Thank you, guys. And as always, cheers.